Honest Hearts is the Fallout DLC that many players either loved or hated, ironically for largely the same reasons. The DLC is particularly unique in contrast to the others, as the stakes are relatively low. There's no deadly cloud to be released from the Sierra Madre that will choke the Mojave, no inhumane scientific experiments that threaten New Vegas, no mumbling Bane imitator saying bear and bull constantly before trying to launch nukes at the NCR and the Legion. Honest Hearts is merely that of a microcosm of the greater conflict in the outside world, as the Courier finds himself stuck in Zion National Park, caught in the middle of an intertribal war. Even as far away as Zion, the war over the prize of Hoover Dam causes ripple effects that influences the lives of the remote tribals found there. Obviously, the Dead Horses and the Sorrows are not aligned with the NCR in any way, but the Whitelegs are literally proxies of Caesar's Legion. Their conflict echoes that between the two great powers, with one faction championing pre-war values of idealistic benevolence, while the other encapsulates the post-war idea of a stark brutality. Lead developer Joshua Sawyer had described Honest Hearts featuring characters that are primarily motivated by a desire to do good, one where the player chooses between virtues rather than vices. The DLC contains clear good guys versus bad guys, in comparison to the core games where each faction is their own various shade of grey more or less. For me personally, I fall into the camp that did enjoy the DLC. I'd rate it my second favourite just behind Lonesome Road. The location itself is incredibly scenic. Having vacationed to Zion once in the past, it does feel easy to immerse yourself in a relatively untouched but undeniably post-apocalyptic counterpart of the real-world location. I'd always been fascinated by the Legion and the fact that it's made up of reconditioned tribals. The Dead Horses and the Sorrows felt fleshed out as proper tribal groups, with their own identity, mythos, and worldview. It was therefore interesting to interact with tribals in their natural state, untainted by the mark of the Legion. The storytelling of Randall Clark, his logs of the immediate post-war world and the inspiration to the Sorrows tribes was also amazing. The man doesn't even appear in the DLC, other than as a skeleton, but honestly feels like he has much more depth than many of the other characters seen in the entire game. The questline is undoubtedly much shorter than others. The whole story can be ended extremely quickly if you accidentally shoot Foley's Chalk on his first introduction. Legitimately, you get ambushed by tribals and then another near identical tribal appears who on your first playthrough has no real distinguishable features that he's an ally. On my first playthrough, I thought the Chaos in Zion was the DLC because I kept shooting him, until I eventually restarted it and figured out there's a whole story there. Anyway, the questline is short overall, yet I strangely preferred that it was able to be more concise with its direction. Stemming on from the scenic nature, I honestly didn't even mind the almost fetch and retrieve type of quests. For me, Honest Hearts felt like a form of vacation for the Courier. Having gone from being a kingmaker in New Vegas to chasing a bighorn calf and returning it to its family should feel underwhelming, but it strangely isn't. It's a relaxing break from it all. Kind of like how Thanos settles down and becomes a farmer after having snapped half the universe out of existence. Now obviously, we can't talk about Honest Hearts without talking about the main course of the DLC, the appearance of Joshua Graham, the one-time legate of Caesar's Legion. Although undeniably an incredibly compelling character, even he received somewhat of a mixed reception for his appearance. As stated again by Josh Sawyer, I wanted the player's first encounter with Joshua to be reductive. In a way, I wanted the player to be initially disappointed. They hear legends of this fearsome, terrible, demonic figure, and when they first see him, he's doing the equivalent of putting his pants on one leg at a time, sitting at a table, maintaining a stack of guns. Even internally, some people complained about his appearance. They wanted him to be huge and monstrous, or they wanted his first encounter with the player to involve him brutally gunning down Whitelegs. I believe that for the character to feel right in the context of the story, he needed to be a man first and a monster later. In Honest Hearts, the antagonist of the story is Salt Upon Wounds, the tribal chief of the Whitelegs. Yet, the conflict of the story itself grapples between the differences in opinion between Joshua Graham and fellow Mormon missionary Daniel. For Daniel, he wishes only to protect the tribes, not only from physical harm, but from moral degradation. The Sorrows tribes are culturally sensitive and innocent, mourning the loss of even their greatest enemies. Daniel knows that the tribe could be led in battle against the Whitelegs, but understands that this warfare would fundamentally change them. He instead seeks to preserve their innocence by escaping from the conflict with their lives and identity intact. To Daniel, Joshua is like the sun. By fighting the Whitelegs, the tribes will see the light and feel the warmth as they stand against their enemies. However, in time that warmth would turn to fire that would consume them from the inside out until they're unrecognizably burned, much like the burned man. In contrast to Daniel, Joshua instead proclaims that conflict is inevitable. The only way the tribes can be safe from the depredations of forces such as the Whitelegs is to conquer them in battle. Although we are inclined to agree with Joshua, the Whitelegs are assaulting their people, and he is kind of the cooler character. You are more inclined to just go with him. It is important to note how slippery this slope can be. Joshua previously explains his role in Caesar's legion as one of gradual compromise. Having found himself in a horrible situation, he helped translate orders from Caesar to the tribes they fought and conquered. Translating descended into giving orders himself. Giving orders himself led to leading troops in battle. Leading troops in battle led to committing atrocities against the dissolute. One sin led to another until he couldn't even recognize himself. The same could be said of his planned extermination of the Whitelegs. Tribes aside, Joshua Graham holds Zion to be a holy place. He dresses up his militancy as one of righteous justification, declaring that while he does not enjoy killing, it's a chore much like any other. But as seen from the in-game quest, he loses himself in bloodlust, proclaiming that he wants to take his revenge for himself. So while I do understand and enjoy the themes that DLC does espouse, I've always kinda disliked how they handled it in the end game. In the final act of the DLC, the player can either choose to evacuate the Sorrows from Zion with Daniel, or crush the Whitelegs with Joshua. Both endings feel not underwhelming, but limited in the outcomes of the final actions that are taken in the quest. In the flight from Zion, the Courier winds up mowing down waves of Whitelegs before finally being confronted by their leader, Salt Upon Wounds. They can either convince Salt Upon Wounds to leave peacefully via speech options, or kill him outright. If the Sorrows do evacuate, the endgame slides indicate that the Whitelegs destroy much of Zion, turning it into a polluted cistern like so many other locations of the wasteland. The Sorrows are resettled in the Grand Staircase, and mourn the loss of Zion, but learn to leave behind their once beloved homeland. I suppose the lesson to be learned from this ending is that home is not a place, but a people. The Sorrows don't necessarily need Zion to retain who they are. However, the fact that Salt Upon Wounds is either killed or made to leave Zion peacefully would render the whole evacuation kind of a moot point. The Whitelegs only came to Zion under Salt Upon Wounds' leadership, given that he wished to have his tribe assimilated into the Legion by killing its foes. If he leaves, or is killed outright, that threat's eliminated. Sure, some of the Whitelegs might remain in Zion, but not in the type of numbers that would actively threaten the Sorrows tribe. Comparatively, the other quest option that I most commonly choose, Crush the Whitelegs, also has its own flaws. Joshua and the Courier lead their forces against the Whitelegs, absolutely massacring the crap out of them. Joshua and the Courier split up, and while the Courier rallies the Dead Horses tribe, Joshua makes his way into Salt Upon Wounds' camp. When you catch up to him, Joshua has their foes on their knees. He murders a bunch of unnamed red shirt, white-leg troops and prepares to kill Salt Upon Wounds. Before he does so, Salt pleads for you to convince Joshua to spare him. Now this is the part that sorta loses me. Obviously it's framed as a moral decision. Joshua is claiming that he was attacking the Whitelegs in defense of Zion, God and the tribes, claiming he does not enjoy killing, yet then states outright he wants to do it to take revenge against Salt Upon Wounds and Caesar. It's framed in a way to make Joshua consider that his actions may take him down the same dark path that he took within Caesar's legion. However, it just doesn't feel like the cause and effect for the endings make perfect sense. If the Courier convinces Joshua to spare Salt Upon Wounds, the Sorrows learn that retribution can be tempered with mercy, and the Dead Horses do not become increasingly militant. Joshua is stated to continue to advocate militant opposition to the enemies of New Canaan, but sometimes shows quarter to his foes. If the Courier kills Salt Upon Wounds himself, the Sorrows become a proud, warlike tribe, while the Dead Horses return home revering Joshua Graham's leadership. Joshua is again stated to advocate military action, but no longer revels in cruelty and brutality. The last option is to let Joshua kill Salt Upon Wounds himself. The game frames this as the absolute worst ending. The Sorrows are described as becoming ruthless, a far cry from the once timid, innocent tribe they once were. They even end up breaking ties with Daniel for his pleas to return from their martial ways. Joshua leads the Dead Horses and Sorrows in an act of butchering enemy corpses, and turns the New Canaanites and Dead Horses into an army that is feared far and wide. Okay, but so the killing of one big bad guy is the catalyst for a group of timid tribespeople uniting into a ruthless army. It completely ignores the fact that an untold number of unnamed whitelegs are massacred in order to reach their leader. Joshua literally shoots a few of them down execution style right in front of us. It feels like one of those action movies where the hero guns down waves and waves of henchmen without a second thought, yet somehow, as soon as the villain is within their grasp, they gain a conscience and realize how morally wrong it is to take a life. And it's like, okay, right, but tell that to the literal piles of bodies that we left behind to get here. I feel the DLC could have framed it much more realistically to have salt upon wounds eliminated, whether by Joshua or yourself, but then the decision to hunt down the rest of the whitelegs be the true moral question. Salt upon wounds is legitimately a monster. He burns women and children alive. He nailed New Canaanites to trees and posts. He literally salts the earth. He was the one who'd been devoted to joining the Legion and attacked New Canaan and Zion because of this. If there's one character in New Vegas that does deserve a bullet in his skull, it's him. With his death, the rest of the tribe does not have a large stake in occupying Zion. So the true moral question could have been to have Joshua declaring that the rest of the whitelegs will then need to be exterminated, with the Courier either going along with this, or countering that they've already taken the life of the one man who led the whitelegs there, and the remainder of the tribe don't need to be killed. I honestly feel this would have made much more sense for each of the corresponding endings. If Joshua was not convinced and massacred the rest of the whitelegs, then yeah, sure, no doubt the other tribes would probably become a bit warmongery. But to say that if salt upon wounds is just killed, the Zion tribes then descended to barbarism is kind of a bit ludicrous. Again, this doesn't take away from the actual experience of the DLC. The base game of Fallout New Vegas had an incredibly rushed development time, with Honest Hearts itself having the shortest development cycle out of any other DLC. It's easy for Fallout YouTubers such as myself to pick apart minute things at the seams, but the simple fact is the entire game is amazing, considering how rushed they were from conception to release. Honest Hearts in particular. It's still great in my opinion. I understand that the lesson is that violence is a cycle, and it takes breaking that cycle for things to truly change. That retribution can be less fulfilling for a person than forgiveness. And that even in the darkest future possible, innocence still needs to be preserved. Honest Hearts does a great job of showcasing how smaller scale engagements can truly allow us to make sense of our place in the world. It could kinda just stick the landing a little bit better in my opinion. And with that, that'll be the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed. Please feel free to chuck me a sub if you like the content, and I'll hopefully speak to you again soon.